Welcome to Creepy Vibes. Today we're venturing deep into the wildest corners of Texas, where the sun don't always chase the shadows away, and the wilderness hides more than just wildlife. These are the top 20 scariest encounters in the Texas wilderness. True tales pulled straight from dusty trails, foggy lakes, and forgotten woods where silence watches. But before we begin, here's something strange. Most viewers make one huge mistake: they leave without subscribing. And by doing so, they miss the creepiest, most bone-chilling stories that only the boldest dare to hear. Don't be one of them. Tap that subscribe button now, because what you're about to hear, it lingers. So, where are you watching from? And what time is it there? Let me know in the comments, because today's just the beginning, and in the Texas wilderness, the scariest stories. Don't stay buried. Let's get into it. They don't put it in the brochures, of course. The Lost Maple State Natural Area is painted as this quiet, peaceful little patch of wilderness tucked away in the hill country of Texas. Golden in autumn, ghostly in winter, all maple trees and limestone bluffs and stargazing platforms. The kind of place you take your kids for a Sunday hike. A place where nothing bad ever happens. But if you ask the rangers who've been there long enough, if you catch them off duty, maybe after a beer or two, they'll tell you not to camp too far off the main trail. Not during the cold months, anyway. Not when the moon's thin and high. That's when the sound starts. That's when she starts. They call it the screamer. No one's sure where the name came from, or how long it's been whispered through the trees, passed from one wide-eyed camper to the next. All they know is that it always starts the same way, a long, unnatural wail that echoes through the canyon after midnight. It starts low, like wind sliding under a door, and then rises until it's piercing inhuman. The kind of sound that makes you freeze, makes the hairs on your arms stand up even if you don't believe in ghosts or spirits or curses. Most folks hear it once and leave in the morning, chalking it up to wildlife. A bobcat maybe, coyotes. That's what they tell themselves on the ride home, trying not to look in the rearview mirror too long. But the people who go looking for the sound, the ones who walk toward it, they don't come back the same. Ben Carter was one of those people. He was a retired Army vet, the kind of man who carried silence like armor. Barrel-chested, sunburnt, and calm in a way that made other people nervous. He'd hiked through worse places than the Lost Maples, jungles, deserts, mountains, but there was something about this trip that pulled at him. He never said why he went alone that weekend in December. Never told his sister, who begged him not to go. Never answered the text from an old squad mate asking if he wanted company. He just went. Ben pitched his tent near the Sabino River, not far from a little bend in the trail where the trees crowd too close and the air smells like rust. The first night was uneventful, clear skies, quiet woods, a thermos of cheap bourbon, and a half-burnt steak over the fire. But the second night, that's when he heard a dot. It came around 1:17 a.m. by his watch. One long, high scream that didn't rise or fall. Just a straight, unbroken note, like something out of a broken emergency siren. He thought at first it was a woman. The pitch was just high enough. But the longer it held, the less human it sounded. He stood up, left his fire burning, and turned toward the trees. The sound wasn't close, but it wasn't far either. It was always just there, as if the forest itself were making the noise, as if it were wrapped around him. Ben wasn't the type to be scared of sounds. He grabbed his flashlight, slipped his knife into his boot, and followed it. He left no note, didn't mark the trail, just walked straight into the dark. They found his campsite the next morning. Fire still smoldering, boots gone, tent zipped open but undisturbed. His pack was left behind, untouched, as if he meant to come back in 10 minutes. He didn't come back. Not for 7 hours. Just after sunrise, a park ranger found him sitting cross-legged in the dry riverbed, maybe 2 miles off trail. His hands were folded in his lap, his head tilted slightly to one side. He looked calm. Too calm. The ranger called out to him 3 times. Ben didn't respond, didn't blink, just kept staring straight ahead at nothing. When they finally got close, the ranger said the smell hit him first. Burnt cedar, but nothing around Ben had been burned. His clothes were soaked, though the night had been dry. His shirt was clinging to him like he'd walked through a rainstorm, but his skin was cold. His lips were blue. His eyes, God, the ranger said his eyes were empty, like something had been scooped out from behind them. At the hospital in Uvalde, they ran every test they could think of. Blood work, CT scan, neurological exams. Physically, Ben Carter was fine. No trauma, no head injury, no signs of stroke or seizure, but he wouldn't speak, wouldn't eat either. Just hummed, very softly, this broken little melody that sounded almost like a lullaby, almost like static. They tried to figure out what it was, what song it might have been. They never found a match. 3 weeks later, Ben was transferred to a long-term care facility outside of San Antonio. He still doesn't talk, still doesn't blink often. His sister visits him once a month, brings him flannel shirts and old military books he never reads. And every winter around the same time, he vanished into the woods. He starts to hum again, just for a few nights, and now? The scream is back. Hikers reported it twice last year. A woman's voice, they said, but not quite. Coming from nowhere and everywhere at once, always out of reach. Always just behind the trees. But this time the sound has changed. Now. There are 2 voices. One high. One lower. Almost like a duet. And if you listen long enough, they say you'll start to hear words inside the scream. Your name. Whispered. Over and over and over. Too big, too bright, too baked in sun and silence for ghosts to cling to anything out here. But Palo Duro Canyon doesn't listen to that kind of logic. It isn't just a crack in the earth, it's a memory. Something ancient and uneasy, like a mouth that opened once and forgot how to close. The tourists come during the day. They hike the trails, pose by the cliffs, snap filtered photos for their socials, and move on. But the locals, the real ones, the ones who've lived in the Panhandle all their lives, they know to keep their distance at dusk. They'll tell you in that flat, matter-of-fact tone only ranchers and dry people can manage. Don't be up near the ridge past sundown. The wind changes, the shadows shift. And that's when he starts watching. They call him the man on the ridge. Nobody knows where the name came from. It just was, like it had been there all along. Like the rocks whispered it one night and the trees remembered. The sightings always start the same way. Someone looks up from the trail, just a quick glance toward the sandstone ridgelines that fence the horizon like jagged, ancient teeth, and they see a figure standing up there, tall, thin, too still, too silent, no wind, no rustle, no color. Just a shadow shaped like a man, darker than the dusk behind him. You blink, and he's gone. That's the usual story. But sometimes, they say, he moves. Not like walking. Not like anything human. Just closer. You look up the path, and he's half a mile off. You keep walking. Look again, he's closer. Not walking. Just is. Like space. Folds for him. Like the canyon brings him nearer, one heartbeat at a time. Kyle and Anna Foster were the first ones to report it in recent years. A husband and wife from Lubbock on a weekend hike. It was their 10th anniversary. She wanted mountains. He wanted something quieter. Palo Duro was the compromise. They took the lighthouse trail late too late. Wanted to catch the sunset. Didn't realize how fast night falls when you're between cliffs. They stopped to take pictures near a rocky switchback, and that's when she saw him. A silhouette against the sky, not moving. Just there. Someone's watching us, she said. Kyle looked up, squinting. A ranger? No, not moving. Her voice was thin, breathy. Just standing there. He was gone when Kyle saw. Disappeared. Between heartbeats. Maybe nothing. Maybe a weird branch, a trick of the light. That's what he told her. That's what he wanted to believe. They turned back. Quickly. That's when they started hearing the footsteps. Not behind them. Not on the trail. Above. On the ridge. Paralleling their path. Crunch. Pause. Crunch. Pause. Anna stopped twice and looked. Nothing. The third time she screamed. He was there. So close now. Standing on the switchback they had just passed 10 minutes before. Arms down at his sides. No face, no movement. Just that sense of being seen with something deeper than eyes. They ran. Didn't stop until they reached the trailhead. When the ranger asked why they were out of breath and pale, Anna just shook her head. Kyle pulled out his phone, trembling. We saw someone, he said, up on the ridge. The phone had a photo. A quick snap, taken over Anna's shoulder. It showed the winding trail, empty, with dusk bleeding across the rocks. But when they zoomed in, there he was. A tall, dark figure, blurry but distinct. And a second later, the phone went black. Wouldn't turn on again. The ranger didn't ask questions. Just said, "You're not the first." They never went back. There are other stories. A group of teenagers from Amarillo who dared each other to stay overnight at a backcountry site. Only 3 of them made it out in the morning. The 4th, Jesse Calderon, wasn't hurt, just broken. They found him curled under an overhang, rocking slightly, whispering over and over, "Don't blink. Don't blink. Don't blink." He hasn't spoken since. A solo hiker named Drew reportedly followed the ridge path at dawn, chasing what he thought was a deer. He radioed in that he saw a man standing on a boulder, looking down at him, arms stretched out like a scarecrow. Then nothing. When they found Drew, hours later, he had walked in circles over 30 miles in one tight loop, his boots worn down to the sole, lips cracked open like dry earth. His compass had spun itself to pieces. There are no footprints. There never are. No signs of entry. No signs of exit. Just the sightings, always near the ridges, always during twilight. Some say the man isn't a ghost or spirit, that he's older. Some leftover thing from when the canyon was young, when blood was spilled and the land swallowed it whole. They say he's a guardian or a punishment, or maybe just a memory with bones. He doesn't chase you. Doesn't speak. But once you see him, once you feel him watching, that's when it starts. The dreams. You'll wake up facing your window. And sometimes, on the second or third night, you'll see the shape of someone standing just past the glass. Not moving. Not blinking. Just waiting. And God help you if your house has a ridge. It tolerates them during the day under the big forgetful sky, when the rocks bake and the wind buzzes with cicadas and heat. But at night, the desert remembers what came before, and it doesn't like being watched. Big Bend is one of those places that pretends to be empty, all wide space and silence, like a photograph too clean to be real. But people who know the land, those who live near Terlingua or run the dusty, sun-blasted ranger stations, will tell you something. Else, if you get enough whiskey in them, they'll say the land moves when you're not looking. They'll say the canyons whisper. And they'll tell you to never camp near the dry washes, not alone, not after dark, and never when the moon is missing from the sky. Brian Metz didn't know any of that. He was just a guy with a camera, a drone. and a growing YouTube channel where he filmed solo hikes in quiet places. The quieter, the better. He prided himself on getting where no one else would go. His viewers loved it. Wanderer Brian, always smiling through the fear. He had filmed in frozen forests, old logging roads, abandoned mining towns. Big Ben was supposed to be next on the list. He entered the park on a Thursday, late November, off-season, no crowds. No permits needed for the backcountry where he was headed. He hiked 5 miles out past the main trails, down into a shallow canyon with a dry riverbed like a fossil etched through the landscape. On the topo map, the area was marked as Culebra. Wash, Snake Wash. He thought it sounded cool. He set up camp by sundown, pitched his ultralight tent on packed sand, did a 360 pan with his camera, joked about rattlesnakes and ghost stories, made instant ramen, sipped black coffee under the stars, and recorded his usual night thoughts log. Then the desert got quiet. It always does at night, but this was different. The wind didn't die, it just stopped. Like someone had put their hand over the mouth of the earth. The stars were bright, but somehow dim. The silence had a pressure to it, like being underwater. He lay down in his tent, unzipped the fly to get a view of the sky, let the recorder run beside him. And at some point, just past midnight, he heard the voice, a whisper, not from far away. Not from the hills or trees. From right outside the tent. Don Estes, where are you? He froze. Then again. Sal. Sal. Come out. The voice wasn't aggressive. It was soft, luring, like a lover's breath against your neck. The tent rustled, not from wind. Something dragged along the outside. Fingertips? Nails? He bolted upright, heart hammering, grabbed his flashlight and unzipped the tent in one motion. The desert was empty. Still. Dead. But across the wash, maybe 50 feet away, was another tent. Brian blinked. He was sure, absolutely sure, there hadn't been anything there before. No. Gear. No other campers. No sound of approach. And this tent was wrong. It was large. Heavy canvas. Faded tan like old bone. Not something you haul 5 miles into desert heat. The style was ancient military maybe, or older. But the zipper gleamed and the flashlight beam new, modern, clean. He stepped closer, called out. No response. His throat felt dry, tongue like paper. He stepped within 20 feet, then stopped. The tent's flap was zipped tight from the inside. No markings, no signs of anyone, no lantern glow. No footsteps in the dust, and that's when he realized the desert didn't feel empty anymore. It felt full. He backed away, slow. Took one photo, then turned and left his pack, his gear, everything. It took him 3 hours to get back to his truck. He drove until sunrise. The next day. He returned with 2 rangers. They found Brian's tent. His gear, all undisturbed. And across the wash. In the exact spot he described, the second tent was still there. Same canvas, same zipper. Still zipped shut. No tracks. No signs of setup. The ground beneath it was undisturbed. The stakes were driven into solid stone. The rangers circled it, knocked, called out. Nothing. They unzipped it. Inside was nothing. Empty floor. No sleeping bag. No food. No pack. Just a cassette recorder, ancient and dusty, sitting dead center. Like it had been placed there for someone. One ranger picked it up, blew the dust off. Pressed play. Voices. Hundreds. All whispering in Spanish. Faint. Echoing. Overlapping. Voile vacui. Come back. The tent was tagged, flagged for investigation. They left it overnight. The next morning, it was gone, not collapsed. Not stolen. Gone. Stakes, canvas, recorder, everything. The sand was smooth where it had been. like nothing had ever touched it. Brian never spoke about it on his channel. He deleted the footage, refused interviews. He moved back to Boise and changed the name of his channel to just Brian. No more hikes, no more tents, just quiet city walks and coffee reviews. Sometimes, when he's alone and the room gets too quiet, he swears he can still hear the whisper. It always says the same thing. Where are you? And some nights, it answers itself. Here. They say smiles mean safety. They say if someone's smiling, they can't mean you harm. But in the Guadalupe Mountains, they say something different, something older, something colder. They say if you see the man smiling just outside your tent, you've already seen him too late. He's not in the books or the pamphlets. He doesn't show up in ranger reports, not the ones you're allowed to read. But if you sit by the fire with one of the older volunteers, one of the guys who stopped asking questions years ago, you might hear about him. In a whisper, with a glance toward the dusk-faded cliffs, they call him the Grinner. He doesn't walk the trails or follow you down paths. He doesn't run, doesn't talk, doesn't move at all. Not really. He just appears after the sun's gone, after the air gets dry and tight in your throat, and just when you think you're alone. You're never alone up there. The wind might say otherwise, but it lies. He's seen at the base of the mountains, always near the base. Campers who stay near Pine Springs or tucked into the shadows of Guadalupe Peak sometimes spot him from a distance at first. A tall figure, still, half in the brush, not walking, just watching. If you wave, he doesn't wave back. If you call out, there's no answer. He just stands there, lit like a cardboard cutout by moonlight or lantern beam, with a grin stretched too wide across a face that never blinks. No one's ever seen him arrive. He's just there. Take your eyes off him, even for a second, and when you look back, gone. But the stories don't come from hikers on trails. Not most of them. No, the real stories come from campers, from people zipped into canvas, trying to sleep in peace, lulled by distant owls and snapping twigs. That's when he gets close. They say it starts with the feeling, the sense of being watched, like someone just outside the mesh, like something leaning over your tent. Your body reacts before your brain as you wake up before you know why, pulse pounding, heart skipping like it missed a beat. Then you see him, through the mesh. Face illuminated in moonlight, not pressed to the screen, not crouched or kneeling, standing. Tall. Straight. Smiling. The grin doesn't twitch, doesn't falter, teeth too white, skin pale like wax left too long under the sun, and eyes, well, there's debate about the eyes. Some say they never saw any, just deep shadows where the sockets should be. Others say the eyes were open, but rolled back, white, glowing faintly, like something was staring from behind them. One man, Andy Kelser, a teacher from Fort Worth, snapped a picture. Just once. Quick flash from inside the tent. Too afraid to unzip it. The Grinner didn't flinch, didn't even blink, just stood there, smiling. Andy ran the next morning, left his gear behind, got a mile down the canyon before a volunteer picked him up, babbling about teeth. They found his tent, still zipped, still empty, but the photo, when they checked the camera, it was blurry, fogged, the resolution shot to hell. You could barely make out the trees behind the tent flap, but in the middle of the frame, a smear of pale gray and two teeth, perfectly white. Too perfect. The image file corrupted 2 days later. People tried to explain it away. Desert hallucinations, sleep paralysis, the mind playing tricks. But the stories keep coming. One couple woke up to find their tent zipper open an inch. Nothing stolen. No signs of animals. Just a thin layer of something greasy along the opening, like oil or sweat, or something else. They packed out the same morning. Another hiker swears. He heard laughter just before dawn, soft, broken, like someone trying to remember. How? And it's always the same description. Tall, still, grinning. No one knows what he wants. If he wants anything at all, he doesn't move, doesn't chase. He just stands right there, close enough that you start to wonder if maybe you invited him. Maybe you smiled first. Maybe he's returning the favor. One ranger said something once. Quiet as hell, barely audible over a can of beer cracking open. There's something out there, he muttered. Something that only exists when we believe in it. But it's not a story anymore. Not after that grin. That perfect grin. Some say the grinner only shows up to people camping alone. Others say he only comes if you speak out loud after. Midnight. A few think he was a man once, maybe a ranger who got lost. Maybe worse, but most don't try to explain him, because explanations don't matter when the face is already pressed to the mesh, when the smile's already burned into your eyelids, because the grinner never blinks. He doesn't need to, he's already seen you. It started the way most things do out in the woods, with a wrong turn and too much confidence. The group was small, 3 friends, early 30s, weekend warriors trying to get off the grid for a few days. They'd driven out from Houston on a Friday afternoon, planning to hike deep into Sam Houston National Forest, real rustic. No phones, no GPS, just packs, a paper map, and a sense of adventure dulled by city life. The forest was wide and green and thick with memory. It pressed in on them as the trail narrowed, oaks and pines crowding the path like watchers instead of trees. It had rained the day before, and the earth still held the smell of it wet bark. Moss something older. They hiked for hours, laughed, talked about everything and nothing. And somewhere between mile 6 and mile 8, they realized they weren't sure where they were. There was no panic. Not at first. They had food, water, daylight. But the map didn't match what they were seeing. The trails forked where they shouldn't have. A dry creek ran in the wrong direction, and the trees, they started to all look the same. Then came the smoke. At first, it was faint, just a gray smudge threading through the canopy above. One of them, David, caught a whiff of burning wood and smiled. "Cabin," he said. "We must be near some ranger shelter or hunting shack." So they followed it. It didn't take long. The cabin sat in a shallow hollow surrounded by twisted undergrowth. A one-room log structure with moss growing on the roof and a crooked stone chimney puffing slow, sweet curls of smoke into the trees. The door was closed, but the window's black rectangles seemed to shimmer slightly, like heat haze. It was old, but not abandoned, not broken down like something from a horror movie. The logs were solid, the shingles intact. The kind of place that belonged exactly where it was, like it had grown from the forest itself. They didn't approach. Not at first. Maybe it was instinct. Maybe it was the silence. No birdsong, no wind, just the crackle of a fire inside they couldn't see, and their own breathing. Then Mark, youngest of the group, always the one to push the boundary, walked toward the door. The others followed slowly. The cabin didn't make any sound. No creaking wood, no shifting weight, no voices. But the closer they got, the colder the air felt, a sharpness to it, like the temperature dropped 10 degrees in a few steps. David raised his phone to snap a picture. His battery was at 78%, then 3%, then dead. He cursed. The screen stayed black. They decided not to knock. "We'll circle back," someone said. "Mark it on the map. Tell a ranger later, just in case." They turned around. It took maybe 30 seconds to reach the trail again, if you could call it that. 30 seconds of soft footfalls on wet leaves. 30 seconds of not looking back, and when they did, the hollow was empty. No cabin. No smoke. Just trees. Just silence. They retraced their steps, twice. Found the same clearing. Same patch of dirt. But nothing was there. That's when David started scratching at his side. At first, he thought it was a mosquito bite. Then more, an itch that burned. He lifted his shirt and stopped breathing. Scratched into his skin. Not fresh, not bleeding, but there were 3 thin lines like claw marks. But they weren't random. They curved, arched, met at points that felt purposeful. Symbols, not letters. Not runes, something older. Wrong. He didn't feel pain. Just the cold. They hiked back in silence. Refusing to talk about the cabin. At the ranger station, they mentioned it casually, half laughing, unsure how it would sound. The ranger, an older man with weathered skin and a long stare, didn't laugh. "There ain't no cabins out that way," he said. "Not for 20 miles in any direction." They asked if there ever had been. He hesitated. "Not that we talk about." David went home. Tried to forget, but the marks never faded. He showed a doctor. They said it looked like scarification. Intentional. Deep, but healed. He hadn't done it himself. Didn't know how he could have. He doesn't sleep well anymore. Sometimes he dreams of firelight behind windows, of logs creaking under weight, of something on the other side of the door, waiting. And every now and then, when the night is too still, he swears he can smell smoke, sweet and old, like something burning just out of sight. They say the cabin shows itself when the forest decides to remember you, and when it does, it's already too late. The forest out there doesn't feel like the rest of Texas. It's too wet, too dense. You don't get the same sky. The pines stretch high and hungry, and the air carries this quiet pressure like the trees are listening. People talk about big, thicket when they mention weird Texas woods, but the old-timers know better. They'll tell you Davy Crockett has its own thing, its own secret. They'll whisper about it if you ask right. They call it the deadlight. It doesn't show up often. Maybe every 4 or 5 years. Long enough for the memory to fade, but not long enough to disappear. It's not a ghost or a creature. It's not a sound or a smell or a thing you can fight. It's just a light, blue, soft at first, then pulsing like a heartbeat. No one knows where it comes from. There's no source, no object floating there. Just light, hovering between the trunks, glowing like the final flicker of an old bulb. People say it doesn't move unless you move, but if you follow it, it always leads you off the trail. It said the light is older than the forest, that it's been floating through the trees since before Texas had a name, and the people who go after it don't come back. Right. Jason Tucker was 16 the year he saw it. He wasn't a bad kid. Just the kind who liked being somewhere else, anywhere but home. That weekend, he was with his cousins and their dad, camping out near Ratcliffe Lake. They'd hiked in a couple miles and set up off a game trail near a shallow creek. The boys shared a tent, played cards, made s'mores, talked about girls and games and how many beers Uncle Jeff had snuck in his cooler. Around 1:30 a.m., Jason got out of the tent to pee. No flashlight, just the moonlight and the glow from the last dying coals of their fire. That's when he saw it. At first, he thought it was another camper's lantern, maybe even a ranger out for a night patrol. A soft blue light hanging low, maybe 4 feet off the ground. It flickered like it was breathing. He blinked. It was still there, not swinging like it was being held, not moving, just pulsing. Jason said later it didn't feel wrong at first. If anything, it felt inviting, like a secret he was meant to find. It didn't call to him, but it also didn't let him look away. He walked, didn't tell his cousins, didn't leave a note, just slipped through the brush like he was following. A memory. The light led him deeper. No trail now. Just roots and moss and old trees leaning in like watchers. He couldn't hear the camp anymore. Couldn't hear the frogs or the breeze. Just his breathing and the crunch of his own feet on dead leaves. The light drifted ahead. Never closer. Never farther. Like it was setting the pace. He doesn't remember how long he walked. He came to a clearing. A perfect circle in the woods with soil too black, too soft like something had burned there 100 years ago and never healed. And in the clearing, there were bones, not buried, not scattered, arranged. Hundreds of them, maybe more. Some tiny, like birds, others long and thick like cattle, all pointing upward as if reaching, not laid flat, not piled. Stuck into the earth, upright, in spirals and lines and shapes he couldn't name. Jason froze. The light hovered above the center, brighter. Now, almost alive. It pulsed faster. And then, just as his eyes adjusted, it blinked. Jason said the world collapsed. There was a pressure in his skull, like something had reached inside and turned on a switch that was never meant to be touched. He couldn't move, couldn't scream. His vision filled with colors that didn't make sense, violet shapes that crawled across the black. And underneath it all, a hum. A low, growling hum like the sound a phone makes on a dead call, only deeper. Than nothing. He woke up near the creek. Face down. Soaked. Shoes gone. Shirt ripped. Arms scratched raw. His cousins found him at dawn, half conscious and muttering in. One word bursts. Bones. Up. Blue. Don't let it blink again. The Rangers chalked it up to a panic attack. Heat stroke maybe, but he wasn't dehydrated. He wasn't sunburned. And the scratches on his arms weren't random. They curved. They intersected. One paramedic swore they looked like letters. Or symbols. He refused to touch them. Jason won't talk about what he saw anymore. His family moved 2 towns over. His parents say he's not the same. He doesn't leave the house at night, doesn't use his phone when the screen's too bright. And every time the power flickers, he screams. They tested his memory. He scored perfect on some things, failed others completely. It's like something else got in when the light blinked. And now? Now people say the clearing is back. Rangers have found animals dead in spirals. Hunters come out shaking. And twice in the past 6 months, campers have reported a blue light between the trees. Not bright. Not loud. Just watching. Waiting. And if it pulses, if it breathes, if it blinks, turn around. Run. Don't look back, because that's when it knows your name. Too quiet, Lisa had said around lunchtime as they spread peanut butter on tortillas beside the shallow stream. Ben had just laughed and told her it was peaceful. We came out here to get away from all the noise, remember? But there's a difference between silence and stillness. One is restful. The other listens. It was their first time camping in Angelina National Forest, real camping. That is, no COA cabins or RV hookups. Just their little tent, a camp stove, and the endless curtain of pines surrounding them. The trees stood tall and narrow, straight-backed and packed in like soldiers, casting long shadows that barely moved even when the wind passed. They picked a spot near a stream because the brochure had mentioned it. Clear running water, primitive, charm. And it was beautiful, untouched, the kind of place that looked like it hadn't seen people in 100 years, but there was something off. About the air, Lisa felt it first. A tightness in the chest. That feeling like you're being watched, even when you're alone. She didn't say anything right away. Didn't want to be that girlfriend who got spooked by a squirrel or a funny shadow. But that night, as they sat near the fire, roasting cheap hot dogs and talking about work and weddings and all the little nothings, People talk about when they think the world's not listening. She fell quiet mid-sentence. Ben followed her gaze. On. The other side of the stream, standing half in the trees and half in the moonlight, was a deer. It wasn't eating. It wasn't walking. It was just standing there. Watching. Ben squinted. Big one, he said. 8 point, maybe more. Lucky we're not hunting. Lisa didn't laugh. She wrapped her arms around her legs and stared. The deer didn't blink. It stood completely still, its eyes reflecting the firelight with that eerie yellow glass shine animals get at night. But something about it felt off. Not wrong exactly. Just out of place. Like a cutout. Like it had been put there for them to see. An hour passed. The deer didn't move. It didn't lower its head. Didn't twitch its ears. It just watched there. Tent. Its head locked in place like it was carved from stone. Ben waved, whistled. Nothing. Lisa went into the tent early, zipper drawn up to the top with shaking hands. Ben stayed outside a little longer, pretending it didn't bother him, but he never turned his back on the deer. Eventually, even he crawled inside, leaving the fire to burn itself out. They barely slept. Every time Lisa opened her eyes, she swore. The deer was closer. Not by much, just a few feet each time, but enough to notice. When the sun began to rise, gray and weak through the trees, Ben unzipped the tent and looked outside. The deer was still there. Same place. Same pose, same stare. They decided to pack up. Lisa stayed in the tent while Ben started rolling up the mats. She didn't want to look at it again, but he kept glancing back, checking, waiting for it to move. It didn't, not until he stepped across the stream. He just wanted to see if it was real. If it was injured, maybe, or just too used to people. He got within 20 feet before the deer moved. It didn't flinch. Didn't run. It turned around slowly, stiffly, and began to walk. Away. Backwards. Not stumbling. Not awkward. Perfectly smooth. Like a film being rewound. Its legs moved in reverse, its head still pointed forward toward their tent. Toward Lisa, its eyes never leaving the spot where she sat inside. Clutching the edge of her sleeping bag, Ben stopped walking. He watched the deer retreat, step by unnatural step, until it reached 2 trees that stood close together like a gate. The deer passed between them. And vanished. No snapping twigs, no rustling. Branches. No sound at all. Gone. Ben ran back to the tent. They left everything behind. Didn't even take their cooler. They reached their car by noon. Neither of them ever talked about it again. Not really, not directly. But sometimes, when Lisa closes her eyes at night, she sees it. Those glassy yellow eyes. That stillness. That awareness. It wasn't just a deer. That's what she tells herself. Because deer blink. And they don't walk. Backwards. And they don't wait by your tent all night like they're trying to learn your face. The weather was perfect that morning. One of those crisp Texas days in late fall when the sky looks scrubbed clean and the air smells like cedar and charcoal. The forest at Bastrop State Park was quiet, content. It had taken years to recover. From the wildfire that scorched through in 2011, and the pines, what was left of them, stood tall again, their scars hidden behind new bark and younger shadows. Ranger Kyle Bishop had been doing morning checks. Trail sweep, routine stuff. He'd driven past the gates just after 7 a.m., filled his thermos with gas station coffee, and started his slow loop through the trails, stopping now and then to pick up a bottle cap or a torn wrapper. Nothing out of the ordinary until he saw her. She was about 20 yards ahead, just off the main loop trail. At first, he thought she was hurt. She wasn't moving right slow, dragging steps, like she'd walked too far or twisted her ankle. And she was soaked head to toe, she dripped. Her hair clung to her neck, her blouse plastered to her chest, dark jeans heavy with water. No hat, No bag, no water bottle, no sound. It hadn't rained in over a week. Kyle blinked and stepped forward, one hand resting instinctively on the radio clipped to his belt. "Ma'am?" He called out. "Are you all right?" The woman stopped. She didn't turn toward him, not all the way. Just a slight turn of the head. The kind of motion people make when they've heard something from a long distance, like an echo catching up. To them, her face was pale, not sickly, not bruised. Just pale like something you'd see behind fogged glass. She said, "Where's the fire tower?" Her voice was soft, thin, like it had been soaked along with the rest of her and left out to dry. Kyle opened his mouth, then closed it again. There was no fire tower. Not anymore. The last one had been torn down sometime in the 80s after they stopped manning them. All that remained was a concrete base up near the ridge and a few old photographs tucked away in the visitor center. He took another step forward, squinting through the light. "I'm sorry," he said. "There hasn't been a tower here but..." She was gone. No sound, no rustle, no footstep. Just gone. Kyle stood frozen for a moment. The trees didn't move. The sun was still shining, the dirt still dry. His radio crackled with a bit of static, then went silent again. Then he saw the footprints. They led from the spot where she'd stood. Wet, heavy prints on bone-dry ground. Deep, unmistakable. They trailed off into the brush, down a narrow side. Trail no longer marked on the official map. He followed them for about 50 feet before they stopped. Just stopped. No turn. No fading. No signs of someone climbing into the trees or stepping off the trail. Just a final footprint, right? Foot angled inward, and then nothing. Later, when Kyle checked the old records, he found something. In 1963, a fire watcher named Clara Boone was stationed at Bastrop's fire tower. One night, during a storm, she reportedly left her post and tried to walk down the trail in heavy rain to warn a group of campers that lightning had struck near their site. She never made it. They found her body days later in a ravine, washed in mud and tangled in roots. The trail had been slick and the footing poor. She'd slipped, hit her head. Her last known words written in a soggy logbook: "Storm coming. I'm going to warn them." Over the years there'd been a few reports, never more than a handful. A wet woman on dry trails. A voice asking about the fire tower. And always those wet footprints leading nowhere. Kyle doesn't tell the story often. Only once, after a few drinks, to a rookie who was nervous about night duty. "You don't have to worry about bears," he said. "You won't see any out here." Then he'd looked out the window at the stretch of pines just beyond the glass, where the trail curved and disappeared into shadow. "It's the rain you should be watching for," he added, "when there ain't supposed to be any. Because if you see her dripping and quiet and looking for the tower, there's only one thing to do. Don't answer. Don't follow. And whatever you do, don't let her turn all the way around." They say he swings when no one's looking. That if you walk the wrong trail after midnight, take the wrong fork past the cypress grove where the roots reach like arms into the dirt, you'll find him hanging there. Not a scarecrow. Not a hallucination. A boy, still, pale, and smiling like someone told him a secret that broke his mind in half. The locals know about him. They don't write it down, but they know. Pedernales Falls State Park draws a crowd in the spring. Families, hikers, honeymooners. They come for the smooth rock pools and the winding trails, the cliff overlooks and the wide skies. But the locals stay away from the eastern trails after dark, especially near the bend where the river slows and the air gets thick, like something's breathing through the trees. That's where the boy waits, and he always has the rope. No one knows his name. No one remembers a missing child in the papers, though rumors say there was one decades ago. A boy who vanished from a church retreat sometime in the 70s, or maybe earlier. Depends on who's telling the story. But the rope, they always remember that part. It hangs too still, too black, from the same twisted cypress tree. A rope like ink, soaked in night. Ben Morris was 17 when he saw him. It was just supposed to be a dare. One of those dumb things kids do when the boredom of a Texas summer gets to your bones. Ben and 3 friends, Kenny, Raul, and Mick, had been camping a few miles off the main trail. Raul had brought weed. Mick had brought beer. And Kenny, well, Kenny was the one who said the words that always get someone hurt. You guys ever hear about the boy with the black rope? Ben hadn't, but by midnight, they all had. The story came out in pieces, slow and drunken and full of whispered tension. A boy who appears on windless nights. A rope that doesn't sway with the trees. A face that smiles too wide. If you see him, Kenny said, slurring a little, don't answer him. That's how he gets you. Gets you. How? Ben asked. No one answered. That night, after the fire burned low, Ben woke to pee. The others were snoring in their tents, and the woods were too quiet. Not peaceful, just hollow. The kind of quiet that makes you second-guess your heartbeat. He wandered off the trail with a flashlight in one hand and his phone in the other, using the screen glow like a lifeline. That's when he saw the tree. It looked like any other tree at first, tall, old, twisted from age. But something about it made him stop. The roots were exposed, clawing out of the earth like they were trying to escape. The bark was scarred, deep grooves running in loops around the base. And hanging from the topmost branch was a rope. Black. Not brown, not frayed, but black as tar. It gleamed in the light, wet-looking, even though the air was dry. And at the end of it was a boy. Ben couldn't breathe. The boy was swinging slowly, not from wind, but from some unseen push. His head tilted at an impossible angle, his eyes open too wide, pupils blown. And his mouth, oh God! That mouth stretched across his face in a grin, so large it seemed to split his skin. Ben stepped back. The boy stopped swinging. Then, impossibly, he spoke. His voice didn't match his body. It wasn't young. It was hollow, stretched like something being pulled through wire. "Wanna play next?" he asked. Ben ran. He tripped. He bled. He didn't stop. He tore through brush and shadow and his own screaming thoughts until he hit the campsite again, collapsing at the edge of the fire ring. His friend sat up, groggy, confused. He couldn't speak, couldn't breathe. Just shook his head and pointed. They packed up before sunrise, but Kenny stayed behind. Said he wanted to prove it was just a trick. Said it was probably some ranger prank, or maybe Ben had eaten something weird. He laughed it off like bravado. Could save him. They never saw him again. Search and rescue combed the trails for days. Found the campsite. Found Kenny's boots near the stream. But not him. What they did find tied to the lowest branch of a twisted cypress tree was a length of black rope. Coiled. Still damp. No fingerprints. No fray. Just a single knot in the middle. Ben doesn't talk about it anymore. He moved to a different state. Works nights. Doesn't go camping. Doesn't go near woods. Sometimes he wakes up screaming, the word play caught in his throat like barbed wire. They say the boy still swings, still smiles, still asks. And if you say yes or, if you say anything at all, he gives you the rope. Then he watches and waits. Because no one plays just once. They call it the Silent Trail, though you won't find that name on any official map of Devil's River State Natural Area. It's not marked with a sign, not flagged on the ranger's charts. But if you talk to the folks who've been around long enough, local guides, old-timers from Del Rio, The rare hiker who came back a little different, they'll tell you where it starts. Just past mile marker 6 on the primitive loop, where the limestone outcrop leans over like a sleeping giant's jaw. That's where it begins, and that's where the sound ends. It doesn't hit you all at once. It fades like a dimmer switch turning down the world. First, it's the birds. No calls, no flutters, no branches creaking from sudden flight. Then the insects stop. You realize how much you depend on that background hum, that living buzz of nature. Without it, your own heartbeat becomes too loud. Your breathing feels like thunder. Even your footfalls on the gravel trail fake like you're walking through a stage set that's waiting for the actor to scream. Only no one ever screams, because sound doesn't work there. Steve Knowles didn't believe the rumors. He was a wildlife photographer from Austin, used to debunking ghost stories with lenses and logic. He'd heard the tale from another hiker, a ranger, actually half drunk at a fundraiser gala. A stretch of trail where sound dies, where phones glitch and compasses spin, where campers wake up with sand in their mouths and red under their fingernails. Steve called it frontier nonsense. So he went out to record it. He brought a high-end microphone and a digital audio recorder, top-shelf gear. He hiked in midweek solo, set up camp near the edge of that rocky bend, and marked the time, 4:08 p.m. He hit record. And stepped forward. The change came faster than he expected. 1 second, cicadas were clicking like clocks. The next, they were just gone. No fade out, just off. Like someone had hit mute on the planet. Steve said he could still hear himself walking, but it didn't sound right. The footsteps didn't echo. They didn't bounce. The air swallowed them whole. He clapped his hands once. Nothing. Not even the feel of it, like his skin had missed. He turned to the recorder. The light was still blinking red. It was capturing something. He walked the loop. 10 minutes. Then 15. That's when he heard it. Not out loud, but through his headphones. A whisper. Faint. Barely audible. Not quite male, not quite female. Just breath and shape and warning. Go back. It said. Once. Then silence again. Steve returned to his tent, shaken but exhilarated. Thought maybe he'd caught something worth publishing. Paranormal groups paid for less. He placed the recorder in a padded case, stuffed it deep in his pack, and zipped up. He didn't sleep well. The silence lingered even outside the trail, even in his own ears. When he woke, it was nearly noon, and everything was wrong. His tent smelled like copper and salt. His boots, neatly placed inside the flap the night before, were filled to the brim with sand. Not just dust or trail grit. Desert sand, heavy, damp, red-tinted, and streaked through it were lines of blood. His socks were still dry. His feet were clean, but the sand, it was fresh. Steve opened his pack to grab the recorder. The nylon was scorched. The device was half melted. The casing warped, like it had been left inside a fire. The battery had split, and the memory card, once full, was now fused to the plastic. He left without breakfast. He never returned to Devil's River. The park rangers found his report convincing but inconclusive. They sent a team to retrace his steps, but nothing unusual was found except the sand. That much was documented. Sand that didn't match the surrounding trails. Finer, glacier. Like what you find in dried-up riverbeds that haven't seen water in a century. Since then, a few others have tried to walk the silent trail. Some claim they couldn't find it. Some say they did, and now they hear whispers when they close their eyes. Some dream of walking in sand so deep it fills their mouths. Some wake up with nosebleeds, but they all say the same thing. There's a place in Devil's River where the world forgets to make noise, and something there remembers you. It stands alone. Deeper than most folks go in Lake Livingston State Park. You don't stumble onto it, you find it because you're meant to. Because you went too far down the wrong deer trail, or because the compass spun itself stupid, or because the voice in your head whispered to keep walking just a little more. They call it the mirror tree. It's old, maybe older than the rest. A fat oak with a scarred trunk and thick, knotted limbs that reach outward like it's trying to hold something in, or maybe hold you close once you find it. There's a strange kind of silence around it, not the peaceful kind. The kind that presses against your ears like cotton soaked in cold sweat. You don't hear birds near the mirror tree. You don't hear the wind. You only hear yourself and your reflection. See, someone or something nailed broken glass to the bark. Not new shards either. They're old, clouded, cracked. Some are shaped like picture frames, others like jagged puzzle pieces. They've been hammered in deep, right into the grain, stuck in like eyes that never blink. Some are so high up the bark seems to bleed rust, where the nails hold, and they all reflect. But not you, not really. Cassie Bell was 17. When she saw it, her parents had dragged her out to the park for a long weekend. Just the three of them. No signal, no Wi-Fi, no friends, just tall trees, sticky heat, and a father who still thought ghost stories were good campfire fun. She wandered away from camp late Saturday evening, looking for quiet, for a place to breathe. She found the mirror tree by accident, or maybe it found her. She stepped into the clearing and stopped. Her breath hitched. Something felt off, like she'd interrupted a conversation and all the speakers had turned to stare. The shards reflected light. Even though the sun was nearly gone, they shimmered, caught flickers from nowhere. She walked closer, curious, cautious, her eyes catching movement that didn't belong. Then she saw a dot in one of the larger pieces, just big enough to hold her shoulders and head. She saw her reflection. Except it wasn't her. The girl in the glass was smiling. Cassie wasn't. The girl raised a hand and waved. Cassie's hand stayed still at her sides. The glass fogged for a split second, like breath had touched it from inside. And a single word scratched across the surface as if drawn by a fingertip. "Stay," Cassie screamed and ran. She didn't stop until she reached her family's tent. Breath hitching, heart pounding like it wanted to climb out her throat. Her parents thought she was making it up. Blamed dehydration. Said she was always too imaginative for her own good. That night, the rain never came. But Cassie's tent was soaked in the morning, soaked from the inside. The zipper had been clawed open from top to bottom, the nylon ripped like paper, and her sleeping bag was stuffed with wet leaves, and in the dirt outside, written with something darker than mud, were the words, "Your turn now?" She never camped again. Some who've seen the tree say the glass shows memories. Others say it shows futures, twisted ones. Some swear you only see lies, but if that were true, why do some reflections keep smiling when you're screaming? Park rangers won't admit the mirror tree exists, but they don't go looking either. And they warn campers not to wander too far from the trails, because sometimes the forest shows you things, and sometimes it wants you to stay. It was supposed to be a reset. That's what Monica called it when she booked the weekend at Garner State Park, a reset. Not a vacation, not an escape, just a pause. A full stop at the edge of a year that had been mostly bad news and hard silences. Josh had nodded, quietly grateful. The truth was, they didn't look at each other much these days unless something was broken, or bleeding dots, so they packed light. Tent, cooler, one change of clothes, no laptops, no notifications. They reached the park late Friday, just as the last of the sun turned the sky into a watercolor of oranges and purples. Their site was quiet, tucked between two limestone outcroppings and a grove of pecan trees. They were so far from the main loop it felt like stepping out of time. That first night, they didn't build a fire, too tired from the drive. They sat on a blanket and ate trail mix, passing a flask of red wine back and forth, saying little. When they crawled into the tent, Monica curled into Josh's chest, and he felt something inside him unclench for the first time in months. Saturday started better. They hiked early, before the sun could turn the air sticky. Walked the painted. Rock Overlook shared a granola bar at the summit. Monica took a picture of a vulture perched on a dead mesquite tree and called it Moody. Josh kissed her. For the first time in a long while, she kissed him back. They lost track of time. When they came back down the ridge and reached their campsite, the sun had started to dip again, and that's when they saw it. The fire was already burning, not coals, not embers. A full fire, logs arranged in a clean, tight pyramid. Flames licking upward in perfect balance, no smoke, no flicker. Like something out of a movie. 3 marshmallows were roasting, each one on a long stick angled toward the fire. Like invisible hands held them in place. One had already blistered and browned, drooping at the tip. Another was starting to sweat. The third was fresh, still plump and white. Josh stared. Monica went pale. "Did you do this?" she asked. "No," he said. "No matches." "We didn't." She pointed at the cooler. Everything still sealed. The fire crackled softly, like it was listening. They stood in silence. The air didn't move. No breeze, no bird song. Just the smell of sugar and something else, something sweet but wrong. Like hot plastic or melting candles. Josh edged forward. He checked the ground. No footprints, no tire marks. No signs of another camper. Only the fire and the sticks, and something else just outside the tent flap. He bent to look inside. The sleeping bags had been unzipped, unrolled, laid flat side by side as if someone had been lying in them, neatly, carefully. The pillows had faint indentations, like heads had been resting there. Monica stepped closer. Her voice cracked. "What is this?" Josh didn't answer, because something had changed. The third marshmallow had begun to turn brown. Even though no one touched the stick. He reached for his phone. No bars. The battery dropped from 72% to black screen in a blink. "We need to go," Monica whispered. "We need to go right now." They grabbed what they could, left the tent standing, left the fire burning, drove out in silence, headlights cutting the dark, neither of them saying anything until they reached the ranger station. But when the ranger followed them back to the site in the morning, there was nothing. No fire pit, no ashes, no logs. Just the tent, zipped tight, and 3 marshmallows, perfectly roasted, sitting side by side on a flat stone in front of it. Each one had bite marks. Jagged. Too wide. Too deep. Monica didn't speak for days after. Josh started having dreams. Always the same. Waking up in a tent lit from outside, hearing something shuffle toward them, slow and barefoot. Hearing crackling fire and voices. Low, wrong voices that repeated a phrase he could never quite remember when he woke up. Only once. Did he remember a word? Welcome. They never went camping again. But sometimes Monica still flinches when she smells roasted marshmallows. And Josh checks the back seat before getting in the car at night. Because some fires light themselves. Some marshmallows roast for someone else. And sometimes the woods just want company. Colorado Bend State Park, with its limestone cliffs, glittering waterfalls, and honeycomb caves, looks like a postcard. But deep inside, where the sun doesn't reach and your breath echoes like it belongs to someone else, there's a tunnel. The guides avoid, unmarked, unmapped. It lies off-trail behind a bend in the Gorman Creek system, hidden by brush and limestone rubble. They say it's part of a collapse system, one of those dangerous spots you aren't supposed to go near, but it breathes, not like a breeze. Not like the draft of air that whispers through most caves. The tunnel pulls in air, then pushes it out. Rhythmic. Deep. Slow. Like the lungs of something asleep. Something big. Something ancient. No one built it, but the way it moves. It feels made. Some say it's the earth itself. Some say it's the devil. Most people don't say anything at all, except for Jared Lang. Jared wasn't a thrill seeker, wasn't a YouTuber or a ghost chaser. He was a hydrology grad student from Austin, writing his thesis on underground river systems in the Edwards Plateau. He'd heard about the tunnel from a retired spelunker who claimed the air down there could strip the voice out of a man. Jared, logical to a fault, didn't believe in curses. He believed in barometric pressure and geological anomalies. So he went, brought his laptop, a handheld anemometer, and a battery-powered CO monitor. Just science. Just data. Just another Saturday. He never raised his voice again. The day he went in, the weather was clear. Bone-dry heat, the kind that makes the leaves crinkle underfoot like glass. He logged his arrival time to 11 p.m. and took a selfie at the cave mouth. A neutral smile stretched across his face. That was the last photo he ever took. The tunnel was tighter than he expected. Jared had to crawl in, elbows grinding against stone, his helmet bumping the ceiling. The entrance gave way to a sudden slope, a tight squeeze that smelled of wet stone and old iron. He paused there, halfway in the dark, and felt it, the air pulling, then a pause, then pushing. Not wind, not temperature shift. It was intentional, as if something massive down below was sleeping and dreaming, and breathing. He turned on the recorder, beginning first test, he whispered out of habit. His voice sounded too loud in that space, like he'd broken a rule no one told him existed. He placed the anemometer on a small rock shelf and waited. The first pull came. Slow to 3 miles per hour. The second push measured at 3.3 miles per hour. But it wasn't the speed that disturbed him. It was the pattern, consistent, identical, every 7 seconds. Like a heartbeat, like breath. Jared leaned in farther. He heard it then. His name. Whispered, soft, like the wind learned how to speak. Jared. He froze. It wasn't the echo. It wasn't wind. It was knowing. The breath came again. Jared. Closer. He should have left. But his curiosity, the same that made him take apart dead things as a boy to see what was inside, pushed him forward. The tunnel narrowed. He crawled, pack dragging behind, heart racing. Each breath of wind now carried weight, like something. Down there was exhaling through him. His flashlight began to flicker. The CO monitor spiked. Jared paused and lifted his head, bumping the top of the tunnel. He looked back. He couldn't see the entrance anymore. The light behind him had gone dark, like something had shut the cave. And that's when the voice changed. It no longer whispered. It spoke. Low. Wet. Inside his head. You came. Jared screamed, crawled backward so fast he cracked his elbow, dropped the monitor. Didn't care. Scrambled until the rocks sliced his knees open, until the tunnel widened enough to stand, until daylight burned the panic out of his eyes. When they found him 2 hours later, he was curled up on the rocks near the ranger station. Mouth open. Silent. His vocal cords were undamaged, but he never spoke again. Not louder than a whisper. Doctor said it was trauma-induced selective mutism. But his mother, when she came to take him home, noticed something no one else did. He breathed differently. Slow, steady, rhythmic. Like the tunnel. Now. 4 years later, Jared lives in a one-room cabin outside Blanco, Texas. He never leaves. The lights off, keeps the windows sealed with duct tape. And once a month, like clockwork, he wakes up covered in dirt. A red dust, the kind found only inside the limestone veins of Colorado Bend. He doesn't remember walking, but if you sit in his cabin, in the stillness of early morning, you'll hear it. A sound low and distant, pulsing like a heartbeat under. The floorboards dot like something sleeping dot, breathing dot, and waiting for him to come back. That's what every ranger at Monaghan's Sandhill State Park tells you if you ask about the sound at night, the high, warbling pitch that rises from the dunes after sundown. They'll smile and call it singing sand, tell you it's a natural phenomenon caused by quartz grains rubbing together under certain dry conditions. You can even find it in textbooks. Sand that sings. Nothing to worry about, but no one ever mentions how it changes. How the sound bends into something that doesn't quite stay wind. How it begins to resemble a voice human, but wrong. Not a melody. Not a tune. More like a scream pressed through water and distance. Warped and stretched into something ancient dot, and they never mention the teeth. Caleb Ruiz came down from Lubbock with a few friends. One April weekend, just 4 guys in their 20s, chasing. Quiet, some stargazing, and the kind of eerie solitude only a place like Monaghan's could offer. Endless dunes, no trees, no mountains. Just sand like skin stretched across a giant's bones. And silence that gets into your ears and stays there. They pitched 2 tents, started a fire, drank cheap beer, and watched the sun melt into the desert. Like it always does, quick and final, the scream started around 11:47 p.m. They all heard it, not the whistle of a breeze, not the howl of wind across canvas dot. It was high, thin, vibrating, a sound that didn't ride the air, it cut through it. Caleb described it later as what it might sound like if the ground had vocal cords. Like someone trapped under 1,000 pounds of sand was trying to shout, but all that came out was a dry, hissing shriek. 2 of the guys tried to laugh it off. One went back to the car. Caleb stayed. The sound came again, this time longer and deeper, like a chorus had joined it. Like something was answering. The fire went out, not slowly. Not in a flicker. Just gone, like someone pinched the flame between their fingers. That's when the sand started to move. Just a little at first. A soft ripple, like something exhaling below the surface. Then, as Caleb stepped forward, the dune beside him sank. Not collapsed, inhaled. Like it had taken a breath. He dropped to his knees and started digging. Not sure why. He just had to. Some strange compulsion clawed into him. He needed to know what was underneath. Maybe he thought someone really was buried there. Maybe part of him already knew. His fingers struck something hard. Not a rock. Not bone. Teeth. A mouthful of them. Dozens. Packed together, rooted in nothing. Human, mostly, but some too sharp. Some with ridges no dentist had ever seen. Clean, white. Some broken, some small like baby teeth. Others massive, flat, square chewing teeth. But not ours. Then the sand screamed. Not from the wind this time, from beneath him. The noise was so loud it cracked the enamel on his molars. Caleb reeled backward, blood in his ears, sand in his eyes. The dune exhaled, and the teeth disappeared again beneath the surface like they'd never been there. By the time he stumbled back to the tents, only one friend remained curled up and fouled up in a ball, whispering about voices under the earth. The others? Gone. No footsteps. No drag marks. Just smooth, undisturbed sand. The police searched for 3 days. Nothing. They said it was disorientation. Maybe they wandered into the dunes, lost there. The park gets cold at night. Things happen, but Caleb knows. He never went back. Now, years later, he grinds his teeth in his sleep. His dentist says it's anxiety, But Caleb insists it's not him, that it's something inside, moving, grinding, trying to get out. Because sometimes, even now, when he listens to the wind blowing over the sand, he hears that scream again. And sometimes he hears it laugh. She sits there every night after sundown, cross-legged on the farthest picnic table at Lake Whitney, where the land slopes just enough that you can't see her from the campgrounds. That table's old, weather-beaten, warped, half one leg, buried deep into the earth like the lake's been slowly trying to pull it under. Most folks don't even know it's there. But those who do, they talk. They whisper, always in low voices. She's always facing the water, her back perfectly straight. Her hands folded in her lap like she's waiting for someone or something to speak first. She wears a white dress, the kind that belonged to a different time. Long sleeves, lace collar, hem touching the top of the table. Her hair is black and long and still, like she's underwater even when the wind's blowing. And her eyes. She doesn't blink, not once. Not even when the bugs are thick or the cold gets into your bones. Not even when you look straight at her. And the moonlight glints off those eyes in a way that makes you feel like she's not just looking back. She's looking through you. Like she's reading the thing you buried deepest, the thing you forgot until she showed up. People say she speaks, but only backward. And only when she thinks you're alone, it's not just talk either. There are stories. Real ones. A boy from Waco, Ethan Dunn, spent a weekend at the lake last spring. Said he saw her sitting out there just after midnight. Thought she was some other camper who wandered too far off. He waved. She didn't move. He yelled, asked if she was okay. No response. Then she turned her head, slow, unnatural, like her spine wasn't made for that kind of movement. Her mouth opened, and something came out. It wasn't words. Not at first. Just garbled noise. Like a cassette being rewound too fast, the tape warping and catching. Then it began to form something close to language. But it came out wrong. Like someone playing human through broken teeth. Puekad, that's what he remembered her saying. Later, he realized it was wake up. Backwards. Ethan didn't sleep for days. He says when he did doze off, he dreamed of her face up close, her mouth pressed to his ear, whispering things that made the shadows in his room stretch toward him. Others have tried to film her. A YouTuber named Cole Danner set up a night cam after hearing about the legend from his followers. It was all part of his Urban Texas Myth series. He parked it just beyond the brush, pointed straight at the table. She was already there. When he hit record. Perfect posture. Facing the water. Cole let the camera run for 4 hours. Came back at dawn. The battery had died halfway through, but he was excited. Said he saw her through the viewfinder, clear as day. He rushed back to his apartment in Dallas to edit. But when he pulled up the footage, everything was reversed. Not just mirrored, reversed. The shadows moved backward. The stars twinkled in reverse motion. Even the sound of the wind had flipped, and the girl? She wasn't just sitting there anymore. She moved. At the exact moment he remembered blinking through the brush, her head turned in the video, snapped, fast, sharp. Not slow like before, and she smiled. Wide, too wide. Her face distorted by the lens, but it wasn't a trick of the camera. You could feel it wasn't a trick. Then she spoke. Just once. One sentence. Backward. Cole slowed it down, reversed the audio, filtered it. It took hours. But eventually, the words came clear. The lake remembers you. He never posted the video. Stopped making content altogether. Sold his gear. Deleted his channel. Moved to Colorado. But the footage leaked. Got uploaded by someone else. Maybe a hacker. Maybe Cole himself in some fugue state. It didn't matter. People watched. And those who really watched, not just clicked, but watched, started to dream about her. Some saw her sitting on picnic tables that didn't exist in their towns. Others said they heard the lake through their walls, water lapping against the edge of their beds. One girl in San Antonio swore her dog stared at the corner of the room for hours after she watched it, growling, teeth bared, and every mirror in the house cracked at 2:17 a.m. There's more. Rangers won't go to the far side of the lake anymore. They say the shoreline is unstable. That's the official line. But a seasonal worker told a story one night after drinking. Too much off shift, said one of the permanent rangers. Went to clear out a group of teens that were camping without permits. He never came back. They found his truck a mile upshore. Keys still in the ignition. Engine still warm. Inside the glove box was a photograph that no one could explain. Old. Curled at the edges, black and white. Showed a little girl sitting cross-legged on a picnic table. Same spot, same pose, same dress. Only difference? The lake behind her and the photo was dry. No water. Just cracked earth. Like the lake came later. Like she was there first. They say if you sit at that table, if you sit just the way she does, the same way you'd pray, you'll hear her speak to you. Not out loud. In your head. In a voice you recognize, but can't place, like your mother whispering from behind a door, or your own voice through a radio filter. She'll offer you something, a memory you lost, a person you miss, a future you think you want, but if you accept, you'll never leave the lake. Your body might, but part of you, the part that makes you you, stays there, stuck in that cracked wood, looking out over the black water. Breathing. In time with the wind. And one day, someone else will see you sitting there, cross-legged, facing the lake. Never blinking, waiting to be remembered. That sweltering kind of Texas night where the heat doesn't quite leave with the sun. It just sags a little, like a bloated thing tired of breathing down your neck. Sickhead has buzzed like live wires in the brush, and the air was thick with the scent of pine, sweat, and something sour that clung to the rocks around Inks Lake. Nate and Lisa were out there on their second trip together. Young couple, 24, met through a mutual friend and fast-tracked into each other's lives like they were trying to outrun a bad breakup or some unspoken loneliness. They thought a camping trip would be cute, intimate, rustic, Instagram-mable. It started normal, campfire crackling, marshmallows blistered and blackened. Lisa took sunset photos while Nate joked about rattlesnakes and serial killers. They pitched their tent on a raised patch of land near the boulders, not far from the shore. The ranger had told them that spot was a little buggy, but dry and high. No risk of water pooling if it rained. Which of course it didn't. That night was as clear as a funeral bell. They turned in around midnight. The wind was still, the lake flat and glassy. No rain. Not a single cloud. The fire burned out slow, nothing but glowing coals left under the ash. No animals came close. Number. Raccoons. Not even crickets. Just silence so heavy it pressed against the nylon walls like a sleeping giant. And then, sometime past 3, the tent dripped. Not outside. Inside. Lisa was the first to feel it. A cold spot against her cheek, like a fingertip made of ice brushing skin. She sat up, rubbed her face, and felt another drop slide down her neck. Cold. Wet. The beam from her phone's flashlight cut through the dark. The inside of the tent was soaked, not damp, soaked. The walls glistened with moisture, water beading along the fabric and dripping steadily onto their sleeping bags. Their gear was slick. Their clothes were wet. Her journal, zipped shut in her duffel, was bleeding ink into itself. But the outside? Bone dry. Nate pulled the flap open, stuck his arm out. Nothing. No rain. Not even dew on the grass. The sky was still clear. Stars still out. Lisa backed into a corner, her breath quick. "What the hell?" she whispered. Then she looked up. There were footprints on the inside of the ceiling. Muddy ones. Dozens. Bare feet, too small for a man but too long for a child. They trailed across the nylon in zigzags, some overlapping, some twisted like the thing that made them couldn't walk quite right. They were pressed upward, like something had crawled on the inside of the tent's roof and dragged its feet across while upside down. And they were wet. Nate's voice cracked. Did you step on the walls?" Lisa shook her head, eyes fixed on the smudged prints. One of them was still dripping. A thick brown smear oozed down the fabric like sap or blood diluted in water. It plopped on her arm. Cold again. She gagged. They got out. Fast. Threw open the zipper, scrambled into the dark. The air outside was hot again, dry as dust. Their skin steamed from the sudden shift. Nate grabbed the flashlight, scanned the tent. Its outside was completely untouched. Not a drop, not a print. No sign of water or intrusion. But inside? Still dripping. They didn't sleep. Waited for dawn by the fire pit, wrapped in a shared towel, watching the tent from a distance. It didn't move. But they could still hear it, soft plips, one after another, like a leaking faucet that didn't want to stop. At sunrise, they tore it down. Every item inside was soaked, mold-smelling. Even the tent poles were slimy. They left. On the drive home, Lisa scrolled through the photos she'd taken. Most were fine: sunlight, shoreline, a goofy selfie with Nate holding a burnt marshmallow. But one photo stopped her cold. It was from sunset, when she'd gone alone to the WATERLINE. The frame showed her smiling, the lake calm behind her. On the far right corner, just barely visible, stood a figure, gray, thin, barefoot, standing by the tent, facing it, upside down, its feet not touching the ground, but pressed against the air as if it hung from an invisible ceiling. The figure's arms dangled upward, its head twisted at an unnatural angle, and where the face should have been, there was just water, rippling slowly, like the surface of a still pond, disturbed by breath. Lisa deleted the photo, but her phone froze. The image reappeared the next morning. And then again. No matter how many times she tried, it stayed. Nate blocked her number 3 weeks later. Said she kept talking backwards in her sleep. Said he couldn't take the puddles under his bed anymore. She doesn't blame him, because now she can't hear the dripping anymore. But she feels it. Every night at 3:17 a.m. Cold, wet, sliding across her cheek, and she hasn't blinked in weeks. At Caprock Canyon State Park, they don't talk about it much. The locals will wave you off if you ask. Rangers change the subject. Even the old-timers who sit out front of the gas station with their thermoses and busted knees go quiet when someone brings up the ridge at dawn. But if you stay long enough, if you really pay attention when the first light creeps over the red rock, you might see it, a figure, tall and white, gliding along the ridgeline like it's got no weight to carry. Like gravity's only a rumor where it walks. They call it the Pale One. Doesn't wear clothes, not that anyone can tell. It's not naked, exactly. More like draped in something that looks like fabric but moves like mist. Its skin, or robe, or shroud, or whatever that stuff is, glows faintly, not like light, but like it remembers how light used to touch it. You don't see its face, not ever, but you hear it, not a voice. Not words. Just humming. Low, broken, like a lullaby from someone who never quite learned the tune. People say it makes the birds stop chirping, that it thickens the air, makes your teeth itch, that it sounds like your grandmother singing through water, or your father if he died screaming. And if you follow it, even once, it remembers you. That's what happened to Doug Paxton. He was a history teacher from Amarillo, mid-40s, camping alone while on sabbatical. He'd read some forgotten thesis about the Comanche trails carved into the caprock and wanted to see them firsthand. Educated guy. Kind, if a little distracted. He checked into the park with a backpack, a journal, and a trail camera, and he never checked out. Rangers found him 2 days later, lying in the brush a half-mile from his camp. No shoes. Shirt ripped open like it had been clawed. No defensive wounds. No broken bones. But his chest, right over the sternum, was marked, not bruised. Not cut, burned, too perfect, pale handprints pressed into the flesh. Fingers splayed wide like whoever, or whatever, had touched him was reaching into him. Not just holding him down. Doug couldn't speak for a week. When he finally did, it wasn't English, wasn't any language at all. Just that same hum, low, tuneless, choking and gasping between notes like it hurt to remember the melody. He died. 4 days later in the Amarillo psych unit, internal bleeding, brain hemorrhage. Autopsy couldn't explain the burns, but the handprints never faded. They were still there when they zipped the body up. Lisa Mooney, a park volunteer who helped log Doug's last hike, quit that week, packed her things, deleted her social media, and moved to Wisconsin. Before she left, she told a friend that the trail cam had uploaded a photo, just one, time-stamped at 6:13 a.m. The day Doug vanished. It showed the canyon's ridge, faintly, lit by the rising sun. And in the middle of the frame, halfway across the rock, a tall white shape, blurry but distinct, too tall for a man. Too thin. No face. And Lisa said, no shadow. Since then, sightings have increased. Always at dawn. Always at the far ridge, where the sun first hits the earth. Some say the pale one is a spirit, old, angry, carved from the bone memory of the land. That it walks the path of something broken. That it's not a ghost, but a scar. A permanent dent in time, leaking backwards into the present. Others say it's not of this world at all. That the humming is a call, not a song. That it's looking for something. Or someone. But those are just stories, right? Except there's something else. A few months ago, a teenager named Maribel shot a TikTok on the edge of the canyon. Nothing serious. Just a morning hike, a trending song, and her turning in slow motion with the sunrise behind her. She only posted it once. The app glitched, froze her phone. She said it buzzed in her pocket for 5 straight hours, even when it was off. And in the video, right before she smiles, right before the frame freezes, there's a figure in the background. White. Still. On the ridge. And if you play the audio backwards, slow it down just right, there's something underneath the music. Something humming. It doesn't sound angry, but it sounds hungry. Now, every morning, just before dawn, park rangers check the trailheads. Not for fires, not for trash. But for shoes. Pairs of them. Left, neatly beside the trail. Sometimes with the laces tied, sometimes with the socks still inside, and no one ever comes to claim them. Not like wind rustling leaves or waves lapping at the shore. No, this is slower, subtler. It's in the moss that sways just a second after the wind stops. In the thick silence between the frog croaks. In the fog that moves like it's got somewhere to be. Locals say the lake talks, if you know how to listen. Glenn Brewer was good at listening. He was the kind of guy who could tell the difference between the call of a southern leopard frog and a bronze frog just by the way the sound carried. Through trees, never married, no kids. He lived alone in a modest duplex outside of Denton, Texas, and spent most of his weekends out in nature, with a mic in one hand and a digital recorder in the other. He ran a niche podcast, Backwoods echoes, just raw nature. No music, no narration. Just Texas wild. Insects, birds, wind, rain. It had a small but loyal following. People who used it to fall asleep, to meditate, to forget the buzz of life. Glenn took it seriously. Maybe too seriously. In October, he went to Caddo Lake. He'd heard it was special, not just beautiful, but unique. Swampy, eerie, untouched. A place that swallowed sound and returned it warped, older, slower. The Spanish moss dripping from ancient cypress trees. The black water still as a mirror. He wanted to capture that quiet, sticky breath of a place that didn't care if it was ever seen. He pitched a tent on a rise near the big cypress bayou, hauled his gear out in a rented canoe, set up his mic on a tripod aimed at the water. Night was perfect, cool but not cold, fog beginning to roll over the lake like spilled smoke. Not a single breeze. He hit record at 11:43 p.m., 12 minutes of pure night. Frogs, crickets, one lone owl. The hum of unseen bugs in long, droning waves. Occasionally, Glenn's voice, a whisper, barely audible, marking times, testing levels, commenting softly for editing. He didn't hear anything unusual at the time, but when he played it back the next morning, sitting in the canoe with his headphones on, coffee steaming beside him, he froze. At first, everything sounded right. Then, his own voice spoke again. Only, he wasn't speaking. It started 1 second after him. Repeating. Perfectly. Word for word, breath for breath. Then, midway through the recording, Glenn whispered, "Levels steady, nice and clean." And the second voice, breathy, slurred, said back, "Clean, clean, not yours." It wasn't an echo. Echoes don't change the sentence. Glenn felt something tighten inside his chest. He checked the waveform. No splicing, no doubling. Just 2 tracks, his and something else. Both recorded by the same mic. No wind interference. No animal calls. Just a second version of him, following 1 beat behind, only. It wasn't quite him. The voice was slower, softer, wet. Like it came from a mouth still learning how to shape words. Then, it began speaking first, not repeating any more. At the 9:32 mark, Glenn quietly murmured to himself, "Need more battery." Second voice whispered, "You won't need it." He yanked the headphones off, stared out at the lake. The surface was still, but the fog? It looked like it had gotten closer and thicker. He packed everything. Didn't even break down the mic. Just ripped it off the stand and shoved it into the bag. Canoed back to the launch like something was behind him, even though nothing moved but the water and trees. Drove home without stopping. That night, Glenn tried to delete the file. It came back. Again. And again. He deleted it 5 times. Each time. It reappeared slightly larger, with new minutes added at the end. Even though the recorder had stopped at 12:03, he didn't listen to the added part. Couldn't. He unplugged his hard drive, threw it in the trash, deleted his podcast, shut down his Patreon, texted his few followers that he was going dark for a while. The next morning, a voicemail waited on his landline. He didn't use the landline. Didn't even remember having it hooked up. The message was 23 seconds long, all static. And then, a voice, his voice, whispered, "You left the mic on." He smashed the phone. Smashed the recorder. Burned his gear in the backyard fire pit while the neighbors watched through curtains. But at 3:11 a.m., every night that week, he woke up to the same sound, croaking frogs, clicking insects. And himself, whispering from somewhere under the floorboards, repeating words he hadn't said in years, private ones, secrets. By Friday, he was gone. Vanish. Didn, single quotes T. Leave a note. The police found his front door open, lights off, kitchen faucet running. His wallet and phone were still on the counter. His laptop wiped clean. Only one file remained in a hidden folder, backwoodso_final_mix.wav. It was 27 minutes long. The first 12 matched the original recording. The last 15? Silence. Then, at 12:28, a voice began to hum, not a melody. Not quite human. And not alone, because. Then a second voice joined it, and a third, and a fourth. Each one quieter, closer, more broken than the last. All humming together, in rhythm, in time, like something rising slowly from the swamp, learning how to be. If you listen long enough, some say you can hear yourself whispering something back. Just 1 second late. The thing about Denton County that outsiders never understand is that the land remembers. It's not just dirt and trees and brush, it's something older, slower, like the ground itself has a mind and a memory and a mean streak. You feel it. When you step off the highway, past the cow pastures and rusted fence lines, where the trees start leaning just a little too close together and the air gets thick with quiet. That's where it starts to feel like you're being watched. And maybe you are. Locals call it the Goatman's Gate. No one builds gates out there. There's no property line, no fence, no house. But there's a gate, a real, rust-covered metal gate standing alone in the brush, like someone tore it off a ranch and left it upright for no reason at all. Except there's always a reason. This gate, it doesn't keep anything out. It keeps something in. It started back in the 60s, when folks first started whispering about something stalking livestock, something leaving hoofprints too big to be deer and too deep to be goats. And then came the screams far off in the trees, like a woman being torn in half, but lower, more ragged. Like it came through teeth that weren't quite human. Some blamed a bear. Others said wild dogs. But the stories changed when people started vanishing. Not a lot, just a few. A boy named Ricky fell asleep in the bed of his dad's truck on a hunting trip. They woke up, truck was there, rifle was there, Ricky wasn't, no prints. No blood, just the truck door hanging wide open like someone invited themselves in. A woman named Carla walked her dog out near the service road and never came back. Dog returned the next day, tail between its legs, eyes bulging like it had seen the devil. Wouldn't bark again. Wouldn't even eat. They say every time someone disappears, the gate rattles louder than the night before. That's the part people agree on. It rattles always at night. Never during the day. And never with wind. It's the kind of sound that doesn't startle you so much as get inside you, like a memory you don't want. Metal tapping against itself, rhythmic, insistent. Tap, tap, tap. Pause. Then again. Like someone's counting down. Or inviting you in. Some people call it superstition. Others say it's a test. One guy named Mark Local Conspiracy Nut, but harmless, posted a grainy video to YouTube of himself standing in front of the gate. Night vision, heavy breathing. He's smiling, flashlight jittering, chain hanging loose from the post. There ain't nothing here, he says, laughing, kicking at the base of the gate. It swings open by itself, just a few inches. Just enough. Mark goes quiet. Camera pans. No one there. No animals. No wind. And then very faintly you hear the rattling again, but it's not coming from the gate anymore. It's coming from behind him. The video cuts. That was 3 years ago. Mark's trailers. Still out by 428, but no one's seen him since. His mailbox stays full. His dog disappeared. The sheriff filed the paperwork, but everyone knew they wouldn't find anything. Folks don't go looking once the gate opens, but teenagers still do. They dare each other every Halloween. They drink beers and talk tough and hike out to the old service road. Some of them touched the gate. Some spit on it. One girl, Sierra, walked right through, turned around, and laughed like it was nothing. But she didn't come back the same. Her mom says she barely sleeps now. Sits up in bed at 2:30 a.m. every night, wide-eyed, humming a tune no one recognizes. Her dog won't go near her. Her phone's camera won't take her picture. And when she speaks, her voice sounds just slightly off, like it's coming through a speaker with a half-second delay. Her friends say she smells like copper. They won't hang out with her anymore. Some say she didn't come back alone. And the gate? It's still there, but it's moving again. Every week or so, someone finds it in a different part of the woods. Always upright, always chained, always facing just a little more north, like it's looking for something. Or someone. They say if you stand in front of it long enough, you'll hear the goatman. Not a snort or a growl, not footsteps, a voice, low, coarse, like gravel sliding down wet stone. It says, you know the rules. You crossed. And then it rattles. Not from the wind, not from any hand you can see, but like it's shaking itself. Laughing. Like the joke's on you. Because the real horror? It's not the goatman on the other side of that gate. It's the one he sends back after you open it. It doesn't move like weather. It doesn't dance or drift. It just hangs there, thick as cotton, clinging to tree bark, crawling low along the marsh, and filling the gaps between shadows like it was always part of the ground. It isn't the kind of fog you drive through. It's the kind that watches you. The kind that feels heavier when you breathe it in, like you're inhaling something that doesn't want to leave your lungs. People who visit the park early in the morning always mention the silence first. Not peaceful silence, not the kind that clears your head or stills your thoughts. No birdsong, no frogs, no crunch of gravel, just fog and breath. In that sense, primal and sharp, that something is close, but no one talks about the eyes. Not out loud. They blink in pairs. 2 sets, 4 yellow orbs, glowing faintly, like bioluminescence, like the dying embers of a campfire, always low to the ground, never moving fast. You might mistake them for distant taillights or the gleam off an alligator's back, until they blink. Once, twice, together, the same way a human would blink. That's when most people turn away. But the ones who don't, the ones who stare a little too long, trying to prove to themselves there's nothing there, they start seeing those eyes everywhere. In puddles on the sidewalk, in the reflection of their car window, in the microwave door, in the gleam of their bathroom mirror at 3:47 a.m. when the faucet turns on by itself and there's fog on the tile. Even though the shower hasn't been used. It happened to Alan Morris. He was a wildlife photographer. Not a hobbyist, the real deal. He had a portfolio published in National Geographic, had trekked through the Yukon and Patagonia and the Everglades with just his camera and a pack. He wasn't scared of much. But he told his sister something strange before he went quiet. Said he'd been out at Brazos Bend for a sunrise shoot. Thick fog that morning. Not unusual. He set up near the Elm Lake Trail, hoping to catch deer or gators in the mist. Saw a flicker low in the brush and aimed his telephoto lens. That's when he saw the eyes. 2 sets. Not animal eyes. Not round, not reptilian. Long, narrow slits, like lanterns behind skin. Yellow like aged paper soaked in oil. They blinked, then blinked again. Together, he said. He froze. Couldn't move. Couldn't even pull the camera away from his eye. Just stared into the lens. Like he was hypnotized. The fog thickened. The world turned gray. And then, softly, so soft he couldn't be sure it wasn't just in his head, he heard breathing, not panting. Not wind. Just a slow, steady inhale, followed by a long, drawn-out exhale. As if something enormous was just standing there, watching him, learning how to be human. He blinked. The eyes were gone. The brush hadn't moved. The air didn't stir. But when he turned off his camera, every photo from that roll was blank, pure gray like fog trapped in glass. Except the last one dot, it was a close-up. 2 sets of yellow eyes, staring directly into the lens like they'd been standing 6 inches away. That's when things started to change for Alan. He stopped returning emails, deleted all his social media, told his agent he was taking time off, said he couldn't focus. Saw there were reflections where there shouldn't be. In coffee pots, sunglasses, storefront windows. He said the eyes were getting closer. The last time anyone saw him, he was standing in front of a broken mirror at a rest stop off I-10, just staring. He didn't speak, didn't blink, just stood there for 15 minutes, then walked into the woods behind the bathrooms. Never came back out. His car was found a day later, door open, engine cold. On the passenger seat was a Polaroid camera, and on the dash, a picture, freshly printed. It showed 2 sets of yellow eyes, not in the fog, but reflected in his own. People still visit Brazos Bend, still walk the trails, still bring their kids, and their snacks and their stories. But no one goes during fog anymore. Not since the rangers started putting up those signs. Visitor safety notice. Heavy fog conditions may distort visibility. Remain on marked trails. Do not approach strange lights or reflections. If you feel watched, leave the park immediately. There's no official report on the eyes, just whispers. They say they're part of the land now. Something that waited in the stillness and learned how to be seen. Something that needs your attention to grow. The more you look, the more you feed it. That's the warning. Don't stare too long, because once the eyes see you, they never stop looking.